So I decided to finish the book because it's got very little part left to go, and I want to get through this book so I can put it in the bag to go to the candy kitchen so it can have another life besides me enjoying it and sharing it with you watching this and enjoying it as well. Page 326. The day he put Maxfield Vineyards as one of his assets on the corporate holdings that he was sadistically satisfying. He was going to make a special new label of the wine as well. Sonia deserved to be inevitably part of the Maxfield legacy, because James Maxfield was inevitably a part of Sonia's, and Holden's entire philosophy on that situation was that James didn't deserve to walk away from her without being marked by experience. Holden was now a man in possession of a very powerful method through which to dole out, if not traditional revenge, then a steady dose of justice. He was also a man in possession of a wife. That was also very strange indeed, but he counted his marriage to Emerson among the benefits of his arrangement. Her words kept coming back to him, echoing inside him all day and every night when he reached for her. Can I believe in you? He found that he wanted her to believe in him, and he couldn't quite figure out why. Why should it matter that he did not sweep Emerson into a web of destruction? Why had he decided to go into marrying her just in the first place when he could have simply wiped James Maxfield off the map? But no, he didn't want to question himself. Marrying her was more sophisticated power play, and at the end of the day he liked it better. He had possession of the man's daughter. He had a stake in the man's company, the sword of Damocles. After all, ruination could be accomplished only once, but this was a very method of torture that could continue on for a very long time. His sense of satisfaction wasn't just because of Emerson. He wasn't so soft that he could change direction because of a woman he'd been with a few times, though every night that he was with her he felt more connected to her. He had taken great pleasure a few days ago when she broke the news to her fiancé. The other man had been upset, but not about Emerson being with another man, rather about the fact that he was losing stake in the Maxfield dynasty. In Holden's estimation, that meant the man did not deserve Emerson at all. Of course, he didn't care what anyone else deserved, not in this scenario. He didn't deserve Emerson either, but he wanted her, and that was all that mattered to him. It was more than the ex-fiancé felt for her. There was one person he had yet to call, though, Sonia. She deserved to know everything that had happened. He was one of the very few who approached contacts she was allowed to speak to over the phone. They had done some very careful and clever things to protect Sonia from contact with the outside world. He and his mother, his Sonia's therapist, were very careful not to cut her off completely, but her social media was monitored. They had learned that with people like her, who had built an empire and a web connection in the digital world, they had to be very careful about cutting them off entirely, or they would feel like they had been cast into the darkness. But then a good amount of their desperation often came from that public world. It was a balance that she has actually on her accounts less now that when she'd been hospitalized. He called it, and it didn't take long for someone to answer. This is Holden McCall. I'm calling for Sonia. Your sister just finished her art class. She should be with you in a moment. In an art class, he would never have picked something like that for her, but then her sense of fashion was art in and of itself, he supposed. The way she framed her life, the scenes she found herself in. It was why she was so popular online. That she made her life into art. It pleased him to know that she found another way to express that. One that was maybe more about than just a way to broaden the world. Holden, her voice sounded less frantic, more relaxed than it used to be. Yes, he said, it's me. I haven't heard from you in a while. She sounded a bit petulant, childlike, and accusing, which frankly was the closest to her old self he'd heard in quite some time. I know, and I'm sorry, but I've been busy, but I have something to tell you, and I hope this won't upset you. I think it might make you happy. What is happy? She said it a bit sharply, and he wondered if she was being funny. It was almost impossible to tell with her any more. He ignored that question, and the way it landed inside of him, the way it had hollowed him out. I got married, he said. Holden, she said, sounding gently pleased. I'm so glad. Did you fall in love? Love is wonderful when it isn't terrible. He swallowed hard. No, I married James Maxfield's daughter. She gasped, the sound sharp in his ear, stabbing him with regret. Why? Well, that's the interesting part, he said, and now I own some of the Maxfield vineyards, and Sonia, I'm going to make a wine and name it after you, because he shouldn't be able to forget you or what he did to you. There was silence for a long moment. And then I'm the one who's locked up because I'm crazy. What? Did you hear yourself? You sound like you married somebody you don't love. It's not about love, it's about justice. He didn't deserve to get away with what he did to you. But he has, she said. He has because he doesn't care. And I've made him care. His daughter knows what kind of man he is now. He's not a controlling share in his own winery. He's also lost an alliance that he was hoping to build by marrying Emerson off to someone else. And the cost of those victories is your happiness because you aren't with a woman you love. I was never going to fall in love, he said. It's not in me. Yeah, that's what I said too. Money was the only thing that I loved until it wasn't. There was another long stretch of silence. I thought you would be happy. I'm getting a piece of this for you. I don't want it. You don't? You have to do what you have to do, she said. I guess so. He didn't know what to say to that, and for the first time since he'd set out on course, he questioned himself. Holden, where is my baby? They won't answer me. Rage and grief seized up in his chest. She had sounded better, but she wasn't. Sweetheart, he said, you lost the baby, remember? The silence was shattering. I guess I did. I'm sorry. That's silly. It just doesn't seem real. I don't seem real sometimes. And he knew then that no matter what she said, whether or not she accepted this gift he'd won for her, and he didn't regret it. Didn't regret doing this for his sister who slid in and out of terrible grief so often, and then had to relive her loss all over and over again. At least this time she had accepted the response without having a breakdown. But talking about Maxfield cut her every time, and he knew it. Take care of yourself, he said. I will, she said, and he was just thankful that there was someone there to take care of her, because whatever she said, he was worried that she wouldn't do it for herself. And he resolved then that what was done was right. He had nothing to do with Emerson or his feelings for her. James deserved everything he got and more. Holden refused to feel guilt about any of it. Very little had been said between herself and Wren about her elopement, and Emerson knew she needed to talk to her sister, both of her sisters, but it was difficult to work up the courage to do so, because explaining it to them required sharing her secrets about her father. Secrets she knew that would devastate both of them. She also knew devastating them would further her husband's goals, because she and Holden currently had the majority ownership in the vineyard, and with her sisters they would take absolute control, which she knew was what Holden ultimately wanted. Frankly, it all made her very anxious. But anxious or not, talking with her sisters was why she invited them to the lunch with her down in the Gold Valley. She walked in the bellissima, and the hostess greeted her, recognizing her instantly and offering her the usual table. There wasn't much in a way of incredible fancy dining in Gold Valley, but her family had a good relationship with the restaurants, since they had supplied wine to them, and while they weren't in places that required reservations or anything like that, a Maxfield could always count on getting the best table in the house. She sat at the table with a view morosely pursuing the menu, while her mouth felt like it was full of sawdust. That was when Cricket and Wren arrived. You're actually taking a lunch break, Wren said. Something must be wrong. We need to talk, Emerson said. I thought it might be best to do it over a basket of bread. She pushed the basket to the center of the table like a very tasty peace offering. Wren eyeballed it. Things must be terrible if you're suggesting we eat carbs in the middle of the day. I eat carbs whenever I want, Cricket said, sitting down, Wren following her younger sister's lead. I haven't really talked to you guys since you defied Father and eloped with some guy that none of us even know, Wren asked. Yeah, since that. Is he the guy? Wren asked. What guy? Cricket asked. She cheated on Donovan, had a fling with some guy, and now I assume this is the guy she married and the reason she disappeared from my party the other night. You did what? Cricket asked. I'm sorry. Now you're going to be more shocked about my fling and more about my random marriage. Cricket blinked. Well, yes. Yes, it is the same guy. Wow, Wren said. I didn't take you as a romantic, Emerson, but I guess I was wrong. No, said Emerson, I'm not a romantic, but somehow the words seemed wrong, especially with the way the feelings were jumbled up inside her. Then what happened? That's what I need to talk to you about, she said. It's not a good story, and I didn't want to talk to either of you about it at the winery. But I'm not sure bringing you into a public space to discuss it is best choice either. You do have your own house now, Cricket pointed out. Yes, and Holden is there. And anyway, it's all become clear in a second. Before the waitress could even bring the menus to her sisters, Emerson spilled out everything about their father, about Holden's sister, and about the ultimatum that led her to marriage. You just went along with it? Wren asked. There was no just about it, Emerson responded. I didn't know what he would do to the winery if I didn't comply, and I wasn't sure about Dad's piece into all of it until I talked to him. Holden and Dad didn't deny anything of it. He says that him and Mom have an understanding, and of course it's something he wouldn't talk about with any of us, but I don't even know if that's true, and my only option of going to Mom would potentially hurt her and if I want to find out the truth, so here's what I know so far, sorry. that Dad hurt someone younger than me, someone my new husband loves very much. But he's only your husband because he wants to get revenge, Cricket pointed out. I think that's complicated too, at least I hope it is. You're not in love with him, are you? Wren asked. She decided to dodge that question and continue on with the discussion. I love Dad, and I don't want to believe any of this, but I have to because it's true. Cricket looked down. I wish I could say that I'm surprised, but it's different with me because I feel like I'm on the outside of things. You both are so deep on the inside. Dad loves you, and he pays for all kinds of attention to both of you, but I'm kind of the forgotten one, along with Mom, and when you're looking at him from a greater distance, I think the cracks show a lot more clearly. I'm shocked, Wren said sadly. I'm thrown by my whole life into this vineyard, into supporting him, and I can't even believe the man who encouraged me treated me like the way he did, that he could do that to someone else, to too many women, it sounded like. People and feelings are very complicated, Emerson said slowly. Nothing has shown me more than that than my relationship with Holden. You do love him, Wren said. Did she? Did she love a man who wanted to ruin her family? I don't know, Emerson said. I feel something for him because you know what? You're right. I would never have let him just blackmail me into marriage if on some level it's a real marriage. She felt her face getting hot, which was silly because she didn't have any hang-ups about that sort of thing normally. But I'm a little afraid that I'm confusing, well, that part of our relationship with being good with actual love. I'm not a person to consult about that kind of thing, Cricket said, taking a piece of bread out of the basket at the center of the table and biting into it fiercely. Don't look at me, Wren said. We've already had this discussion about my own shameful issues. Cricket looked at Wren questioningly but didn't say anything. Well, the entire point of this lunch wasn't to talk about me or my feelings or even Dad. It's to discuss what we are going to do, because the three of us can band together and we can make all the controlling decisions for the winery. We supersede my husband even. We can protect the label, keep his actions in check, and make our own mark. You're right, Cricket, Emerson said. You have been on the outside looking in for far too long, and you deserve better. I don't actually want to do anything at the winery, Cricket said. I got a job. You did? Yes, at the Sugar Cup. Making coffee? Yes, Cricket said proudly. I want to do something different from the whole Maxfield thing, but I'm with you in terms of banding together for your decision-making. I'll be a silent partner and I'll support you. I'm in, Wren said, although you realize that your husband has the ace up his sleeve, and he could just decide to ruin us anyway. Yes, he could, Emerson said, but now he owns a piece of the winery, and I think his ownership means more to him than that. And he has you, Wren pointed out. I know, Emerson said, but what can I do about it? You do love him, Cricket said. Her eyes were getting wide. I never thought you were sentimental enough. To fall in love? I have a heart, Cricket. Yes, but you were going to marry when you didn't even love your fiancé. It's so patently obvious that you don't have any feelings for Donovan at all, and you were just going to marry him anyway, so I assumed it didn't matter to you. Not really. And now you've gone and fallen in love with this guy. Someone who puts you in danger with the very thing you care about the most, the thing you were willing to marry that bowl of oatmeal for. He wasn't a bowl of oatmeal, Emerson said. You're right, Wren said. He wasn't, because at least the person might want to eat a bowl of oatmeal, even if it's plain. You never want to eat him. Oh, for God's sakes. Well, Wren said, it's true. What matters is that the three of us are on the same page. No matter what happens, we're stronger together. Right, Wren and Cricket agreed. I felt like the rug was pulled out from under me when I found out about Dad. The winery didn't feel like it would ever seem like home again. I felt rootless drifting, but we are a team. We are the Maxfield label. We are the Maxfield name just as much as he is. Agreed, Wren said. Agreed, said Cricket. And their agreement made Emerson feel some sense of affirmation, some sense of who she was. She didn't have the relationship with her father she thought she had. She didn't have the father she thought she had at all. Her relationship was with Holden. Well, she was still trying to figure that out, but her relationship with Wren and Cricket was real, and at least that was strong enough to weather any of this. And eventually she would have to talk to her mother, and maybe she would find something there that surprised her too, because if there was one thing she was learning, it didn't matter how things appeared. What mattered was the truth. Really, as the person who controlled the brand of an entire label using pictures on the internet, she should have known better from the start. But somehow she had thought that because she was so good at manipulating those images that she might be immune to falling for them. Right at this moment she believed in two things, her sisters and the bond that was of heat between herself and Holden. Those seemed to be the only two things that made any sense, the only things that had any kind of authenticity to them. And maybe how you feel about him, she's thinking. Well, maybe. But the same problem was she couldn't be sure if he felt the same. And just at that moment she was too afraid to take a chance at being hurt, because she already was raw and wounded, and she didn't know if she could stand anything else. But she had her sisters, and she would rest in them for that for now. I need a tea break. The weeks that followed were strange. They were serene in some ways, which Emerson hadn't really expected. Her life had changed, and she was surprised on how positive she found the change. Oh, losing her respect for her father wasn't overly positive, but working more closely with her sisters was. She and Wren always been close, but both of them had found a bit of challenge to connect with cricket, but it seemed easier now. The three of them were a team. It wasn't Wren and Emerson on the team Maxfield, with cricket hanging out on the sidelines. It was a feat to launch a new sort of wine on the heels of the Select label, which they only had just released, but the only demand Holden had made of the company so far was they release a line of wines underneath his sister's name. Actually, Emerson thought it was brilliant. Sonia had such a presence online, even if she wasn't in the public at the moment, her image was synonymous with youth. Sonia's reputation gave Emerson several ideas how to market the wines geared toward the youthful jet-set crowd who loved to post photographs of their every move. One of the first things Emerson had done was consult a graphic designer about making labels that were eminently postable, along with coming up with a few snappy names for the unique blends they would use. And of course they would need the price point to be right. They would start with 3. Tenalo Tantrum, Chardonnay, and Noe Rosé. Cricket rolled her eyes at the whole thing, feeling out of step with the other people her age. She had no desire to post any kind of social media site and found these puns ridiculous. Wren, while not a big enthusiast herself, at least understood the branding campaign. Emerson was ridiculously pleased, and together the three of them enjoyed doing their work. Cricket, true to her word, had not overly involved herself, given that she was training down at the coffee shop. Emerson couldn't quite understand why her sister wanted to work there, but she could understand why Cricket felt the need to gain some independence. Being a Maxfield was difficult. But it was also interesting, building something that wasn't for her father's approval. Sure, Holden's was involved on some level, but this was different from any other work she'd done. She was doing this much for herself as for him, and he trusted that she would do a good job. She knew that she would. It felt good. The prototype labels, along with the charms she had chosen to drape elegantly over the narrow neck of each bottle, came back from the production relatively quickly, and she was so excited to show Holden she could hardly contain herself. She wasn't sure why she was so excited to show him, only that she was. If it wasn't as if she wanted his approval the way she had with her father, it was more that she wanted to share what she had created, the way she felt she needed to please him. This was more of an excitement sort of feeling. She wanted to please Holden in a totally different way. She wanted to make him happy. She wondered what would make a man like him happy, if he could be happy, and suddenly she was beset by the burning desire to try. He was a strange man, her husband, filled with dark intensity, but she knew that that part of the intensity was intense capacity to love. The things that he had done for his sister all of her life, really, and for his mother. It wasn't just this, though it was a large gesture, but everything. He had protected his mother from endless array of boyfriends. He had made sure Sonia got off to school every day. He had bought his mother and sister their own houses the moment he had begun making money. She had done research on him, and somewhat covertly in the past weeks, and she had seen that he had donated large amounts of money, homes, to a great many people in need. He hid all of that generosity underneath a gruff, hard exterior. Knowing that what she knew now, she continually came back to that moment when he refused to say his plan was revenge born out of love for his sister, and as if admitting something like love would be disastrous for him. She saw the top of his cowboy hat through the window of the tasting room, where she was waiting with the Sonia-branded wine. He walked in, and her heart squeezed tight. "I have 3 complete products to show you, and I hope you're going to like them." She held up the first bottle, Tempralo Tantrum, with a little silver porcupine charm dangling from the top, because porcupines are grumpy, she said. "Are they? Well, do you want to hassle one, or find out how grumpy they are, because I don't." "Very nice," he said, brushing his fingers over the gold foil on the label. "People will want to take pictures of it. Even if they don't buy it, they're going to post it and share it." He looked at the other ones, one with a rose gold unicorn charm, the next with a platinum fox, and above each of them the names was Sonia. "She'll love this," he said. His voice was suddenly soft. "How is she doing? Last I spoke to her, I don't know, a bit better. She didn't seem as confused. Do they know why she misremembers sometimes?" He had told her about how often his sister didn't remember, and she had fairly late-term miscarriage, that sometimes she would call him scared looking for a baby she didn't have. It broke Emerson's heart, knowing everything Sonia had gone through. And she supposed there were plenty of young women who could have gone through something like that and not ended up in such a difficult position, but Sonia wasn't one of them. And the fact that Emerson's father had chosen someone so vulnerable upon learning how vulnerable she was had ignored the distress she was in. If Emerson had been on the fence about whether or not her father was redeemable, the more she knew about the state Holden's sister had been left in, the less she thought so. Her brain is protecting her from the trauma, though it's doing a pretty bad job, he said. Every time she has to hear the truth again, it hurts her all over. Well, I hope this makes her happy, she said, gesturing to the wine, and that it makes her feel like she's a part of this, because she's a part of the family now, because of you. My sisters and I, we care about what happens to her. People do care. You've done an amazing job with us, he said. The sincerity in his voice shocked her. I never could have figured out how to make this wine something she specifically would like so much, but this, she's going to love it. He touched one of the little charms. She's going to think these are just perfect. I'm glad. I'd like to meet her someday, when she's feeling well enough that for something like that. I'm sure we can arrange it. After the encounter, she kept turning her feelings over and over inside her. She was changing, and what she wanted was changing. She was beginning to like her life with Holden more than like it. There was no denying the chemistry they shared. And what happened between them at night was singular, like nothing else had ever experienced, but it was that moment like that one, the little moments that happened during the day, that surprised her. She liked him. And if she was really honest with herself, the more she liked him, she needed. She needed to somehow show him that she wanted more. Of course, she didn't know what more there was, considering the fact they were already married. She was still thinking about what she wanted, what she could do, when she saw Wren later that day. Have you ever been in love? Wren looked at her, jerking her head abruptly to the side. No, she said. Don't you think you would have known if I've ever been in love? I don't know. We really don't talk about that kind of stuff. We talk about work. You don't know if I've ever been in love. Well, other than Holden, you haven't been. You've had boyfriends, but you haven't been in love. I didn't tell you I was in love with Holden. But you are, Wren said, which is why I assume you're asking me about love now. Yes, Emerson said. Okay, I'm in love with Holden. And I need to figure out a way to tell him, because how do you tell a man that you want more than just marriage? You tell him that you love him. It doesn't feel like enough. Anything I can say anytime I want, that doesn't make it real, but I want to see the way that I feel has changed. Well, I don't know, except men don't really use words as much as... Use your imagination, kids. Next page, 347. She reached next to her, pulling out a large velvet box. And we're missing something else. She opened it up. Inside it was a thick band of metal next to a slimmer one. They're wedding bands, she said. One for you and one for me. What brought this on? He didn't really know what to say. He didn't know what to think about all this. The past few weeks had been so good between the two of them that couldn't be denied. But he felt like she was proposing to him, and that was an idea he could barely wrap his mind around. I want to wear your ring, she said, and I guess I brought the rings, but this ring is mine, she said, pulling out the man's ring, and I want you to wear it. This ring is yours, and I want you to wear it. She took out the slim band and placed it on her finger, then held the thicker one out for him. I've never been one much for jewelry. You've never been one much for marriage either, but here we are. I know that we had a strange start, but it's been a good partnership so far, hasn't it? The work she had done on his sister's wine had been incredible. That much was true. The care she'd put into it surprised him. It hadn't been simple. It had been a generic nod to Sonia. Emerson had made something that somehow managed to capture his sister's whole personality, and he knew Emerson well enough to know that she had done it by researching who Sonia was. And when Emerson asked him about his sister, he knew that she cared. Their own mother didn't even care that much. But she seemed to bleed with caring, with regret for Sonia had been hurt. And now Emerson wanted rings, wanted to join herself to him in a serious way. And in his mind he's thinking, and why not? She's your wife. She should be wearing your ring. Thanks, he said, and taking the ring, putting it on quickly. Okay. Page 350. I love you. The words were an arrow straight through his chest. Emerson. She clung to him, gasping his face. I love you, she said. And he would have pulled away, done something to escape, if his desire for her was not too intense. Love. Had anyone ever said those words to him? He didn't think so. He should let go of her. He should stop. But he was powerless against the driving need to be with her. It wasn't even about release. It was about something else, something he couldn't name or define. Can't you? He ignored that voice. He ignored the burning sensation in his chest and tried to block out the words she said. But she said them over and over again, and something in him was so hungry for them he didn't even know how to deny himself. I love you. And that was when he finally pulled away. So, we've got some love going on from Emerson to Holden. Will Holden ever accept it and move forward? Will the sisters make her realize that, well, they already told her that they know she's in love with him, but has she went too far by giving him a ring? Is that going to spook him now the other direction? And what about her father? Is he really out of the picture of her life? Let's keep reading on. She had known it was a mistake, but she hadn't been able to hold it back, the declaration of love, because she did love him. It was true, with all of herself, and while she's been determined to show him with her body and with the vows she made with the rings she had bought, it still was not enough. She had thought the words by themselves wouldn't be enough, but the actions without the words didn't mean anything either, not to her, not when they were this big shift inside her, as real, as deep as anything ever had been. She wanted for so long to do enough that would be worthy, and she felt like something had crystallized inside her, because all those things she craved was the approval. It was surface. It was like a brand, the way that her father saw the brand. That was, as long as the outside looked good, as long as all the external things were getting done, that was all that mattered. But it wasn't. Because what she felt, who she was, and her deepest parts, those were the things that mattered, and she didn't have to perform or be good to be loved. She was a person and was enough all on her own, and that was what Holden had become to her, and that was what she wanted for her life, for her marriage, not something as shallow as approval for a performance. A brand was meaningless if there was no substance behind it. A beautiful bottle of wine didn't even matter if what was inside was nothing more than grape juice. A marriage was useless if love and commitment weren't at the center. If those deep things, those deep connections, and what she hadn't had them, not in all her life, not really, she was beginning to forge them with her sisters, and she needed them from Holden. And if it meant risking disapproval, risking everything, then she would. She had, and she could see that her declaration definitely hadn't been the most welcome. Since she told him she loved him, everything about him was shut down, shut off. She knew him well enough to recognize that. I don't know what you expect me to say. Traditionally, people like to hear I love you too, but I'm suspecting I'm not going to get that. So here's the deal. You don't have to say anything. I wanted you to know how I felt, how serious I am, how much my feelings have changed since I first met you. Why? Because, she said, because you came into my life and you turned it upside down. You uncovered so many things that were hidden in the dark for so long. And yes, some of that uncovering has been painful, but more than that, you made me realize what I really wanted from life. I thought that as long as everything looked okay, it would be okay, but you destroyed that. You destroyed the illusions all around me, including the ones I had built for myself. Meeting you, feeling that attraction for you, it cut through all the BS. I thought that I could marry a man I didn't even feel a temptation to be with. And then I met you. I felt more for you in those few minutes in the vineyard that night than I had felt for Donovan in the 2 years that we'd been together. I couldn't imagine not being with you. It was like an obsession that when we were together, that you made me want all these things, made me do all these things that I never would have thought I would do, but those are the real parts of me, all that I am. I thought that if I put enough makeup on and smiled wide enough, and put enough filters on the pictures, that I could be the person I needed to be, but it's not who I am. Who I am is the woman I am when I'm with you, in your arms, with you. The things you make me feel, the things you make me want, that's real, and it's amazing, because none of this is about optics. It's not about pleasing anyone. It's just about me and you. It's so wonderful to have found this, to have found you. You didn't find me, honey. I found you. I came here to get revenge on your father. This isn't fate. It isn't. It was calculated through and through. It started that way, she said. I know it did, and I would never call it fate, because I don't believe it was divine design that your sister was injured the way she was. But what I do believe is that there has to be a way to make something good out of something broken, because if there isn't, then I don't know what future you and I could possibly have. There are things that make sense in this world, he said. Emotion isn't one of them. Money is. What we can do with the vineyard makes sense. We can build stuff together. We don't need any of the other stuff. The other stuff is only everything. It's only love. It took me until right now to realize it's the missing piece. It's what I've been looking for all this time. It really is, and I love you. I love you. I love you down to my bones. It's real. It's not about a hashtag or a brand. It's how I feel, and how it goes beyond rational and reasonable, how it goes beyond what should be possible. I love you, and it changed the way I see myself. Are you sure you're just not looking for approval from someone else? Somewhere else? You lost that relationship with your father, and now you're not my father, and I'm not confused, so don't try to tell me that I am. I don't do love. he said. His voice was hard as stone. Somehow I knew you would say that. You're so desperate to make me believe that, aren't you? Mostly because I think you're so desperate to make yourself believe it. You won't even admit that you did all of this because you love your sister. Because you were thinking about happy families and you're thinking about people who share their lives. That's never been what I've had with my mother and sister. I take care of them. When I say that, I'm telling you the truth. It's not the give and take. You loving them, she said, and then them being selfish with that love has nothing to do with who you are or what you're capable of. Why can't we have something other than that? Something other than me trying to earn your approval and you trying to rescue. Can't we love each other? Can't we give that to each other? That's what I want. I think our bodies knew that was right all along. I know why you were here and why you were supposed to and what you weren't supposed to want, and I know what I was supposed to do, but I think we were always supposed to be together with each other. I do. From the deepest part of my body, I truly believe that. Bodies don't know anything, he said. They just know they want boom boom. That's not love. And it's not anything worth tearing yourself apart over. But I don't have any other choice. I'm torn apart by this, by us, by what we could be. There isn't a us. There is a you and a me. We're married and I'm willing to make this work, but you have to be realistic about what this means to a man like me. No, Emerson said, I refuse to be realistic. Nothing in my life has ever been better because I was realistic. The things that have been good happened because I stepped out of my comfort zone. I don't want to be trapped in a one-sided relationship to always be trying to earn my place. I've done that. I've lived that. I don't want to do it anymore. Fair enough, he said. Then we don't have to do this. No, she said, I want our marriage. You want me to love you, and I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't, and I won't. And he reached out his callous fingertips, skimming her cheek. Honey, I appreciate you saying all this, but I'm not like your father, but it's pretty clear that I am. I'm not going to make you sign a non-disclosure agreement or anything like that. I'm going to ask one thing of you. Keep the Sonya wine going for my sister, but otherwise, my share of the winery goes to you. What? I'm giving it back. I'm giving it to you because it's yours. It's not mine. You would rather do all of that than try to love me. I never meant to hurt you, he said. That was never my goal. Whether you believe it or not, I don't have strong enough feelings about you to want to hurt you. And those words were like an arrow through her heart, piercing deeper than any other cruelty that could have come out of his mouth. It would have been better, in fact, if he had said that he hated her, if he had threatened to destroy the winery again, if her ultimatum had made him fly into a rage, but it didn't. Instead, he was cold, closed off, and utterly impassive. Instead, he looked like a man who truly didn't care, and she truly would have taken his hatred over that any day because it would have meant that at least he felt something. But she didn't get that. Instead, she got a blank wall of nothing. She couldn't fight this, couldn't push him back against nothing. If he didn't want to fight, then there was nothing for her to do. So that's it, she said. You came in here like a thunderstorm, ready to destroy everything in your path, and now you're just letting me go. Your father is handled. The control of the winery is with you and your sisters. I don't have any reason to destroy you. I don't think you're being chivalrous. I think you're being a coward. Cowards don't change their lives, don't make something of themselves the way I did. Cowards don't go seeking justice for their sisters. Cowards do run when someone demands something that scares them, though. And that's what you're doing. Make no mistake. You can pretend you're a man without fear. You're hard in some ways, and I know it. But all that hardness is just to protect yourself, and I wish I knew why. I wish I knew what I could do. It won't last, he said. Whatever you think you want to give me, it won't last. Why do you think that? I've never actually seen anyone want to do something that wasn't ultimately about them serving themselves. Why would you be any different? It's not me that's different. It's the feelings. But you have to be able to put your trust in feelings in order to believe in something like that, and I don't. I believe in things that you can see and things you can buy. I believe in us, she said, pressing her hand against her chest. You believe wrong, darling. Pain welled up inside her. You're not the big bad wolf after all, she said. At least he had the courage to eat Red Riding Hood all up. You don't even have the courage to do that, and you should be grateful. You don't get to break my heart and tell me I should be grateful because you didn't do it a certain way. The end result is in the same, and I hope that someday you realize you broke your own heart too. I hope that someday you look back on this and you realize that we had the love and you were afraid to take it, and I hope you ask yourself why. It was so much easier for you to cross a state because of rage than it was for you to cross a room and tell someone that you love them. Sorry. Holden had changed her, had made her realize the depth of capacity for pleasure, for desire, for love, and had given her an appreciation of that depth, an understanding of how should feel if dug deep instead of clinging to perfection on the surface. And whatever happened, she would walk away from this experience changed, would walk away from it wanting more, wanting better. He wouldn't, though. And of all those things, her broke heart in this moment was the truth, was the one that cut the deepest. Emerson knew she couldn't avoid having a conversation with her mother any longer. There were several reasons for that. The first being that she had to move back home. The second being that she had an offer to make her father, but she needed to talk to her mom about it first. Emerson took a deep breath, walked into the sitting room where she knew she would find her mom at this time of day. She always took her tea in the sitting room with a book in the afternoon. "Hi," she said, "can we talk?" "Of course," her mom said, straightening and setting her book down. "I didn't expect to see you here today." "Well, I'm kind of back here, because I hit a rough patch in my marriage. You know, by which I mean my husband doesn't want to be married to me anymore." "That is a surprise." "Is it? I married him quickly, and I really did not, for the best reasons. It seemed like you cared for him quite a bit." "I did, but the feeling wasn't mutual, so there's not much I can do about that in any case." "We all make choices, although I thought you had finally found your spine with this one." Emerson frowned. "My spine?" "Emerson, you have to understand the reasons I always resisted your involvement in the wineries, because I didn't want your father to own you." "What are you talking about?" "I know you know, the way he is. It's not a surprise to me. I've known it for years. He's never been faithful to me, but that's besides the point. The real issue is the way that he uses people." "You've known all along?" "Yes, and when I had you girls, the biggest issue was that if I left, he would make sure that I never saw you again. That wasn't a risk I could take, and I won't lie to you, I feared poverty more than I should have. I didn't want to go back to it, and so I made some decisions that I regret now, especially as I watched you grow up, and I watched the way he was able to find closeness with you and Wren, when I wasn't able to. No matter what I did, you never seemed you thought like I did enough, or like I had done it right. And I'm very sorry about that. I made mistakes in pushing you. I pushed you away, and then I think I pushed you toward your father, which I didn't mean to. I was afraid, always, and I wanted you to be able to stand on your own feet, because if I ended up hobbling myself, I was dependent on his money. I didn't know how to do anything separate from this place, separate from him, that could keep me from sinking back into poverty that I was raised in. I was trapped in many ways by my own greed. I gave up so much for him." Her eyes clouded over. "That was another part of the problem. When I chose your father, it was such a deep, controversial thing. It caused so much pain, to myself included in many ways. And I'm too stubborn and stiff-necked to take that kind of thing." "I don't understand." She ran a hand over her lined brow, pushing her dark hair off her face. "I was in love with someone else. There was a misunderstanding between us, and we broke up. Then your father began to show interest because of a rivalry he had with my former beau. I figured that I would use that, and if all went too far, that this is my life I made for myself. And what I really wanted to do was try to atone for my sins. It was to make sure you girls had it different. But then he was pushing you to marry. So when you came back from Las Vegas married to Holden, what I had hoped that you had found something more." Emerson was silent for a long moment, trying to process all this information, and suddenly she saw everything so clearly through her mother's eyes. Her fears, the reason she had pushed Emerson the way she had, the way she disapproved of Emerson pouring everything into the winery. "I do love Holden," Emerson said, "but he says he doesn't love me. That's what happened with the man I loved, and I got angry and I went off on my own. Then I went to someone else. I've always regretted it, because I've never loved your father the way I loved him. Then it was too late. I held on to my pride, and I didn't want to lower myself to beg him to be with me, but now I wish I had. I wish I had exhausted everything in the name of love, rather than giving so much stubbornness and spite to financial security. Without love, these sorts of places just feel like a mausoleum, a crypt for the dead dreams." She smiled sadly, looking around the vast, beautiful room that seemed suddenly so much darker. "I have you girls, and I've never regretted that. I have regretted our lack of closeness, Emerson, and I know that it's my fault." "It's mine, too," Emerson said. "We've never really talked like this before. Not like this. There wasn't much I could tell you, not with the way you felt about your father, and you have to understand, while I wanted to protect you, I also didn't want to shatter your love for him, because no matter what else he has done, He does love his daughters. He's a flawed man, make no mistake, but what he feels for you is real. I don't know if I'm in a place where that can matter much to me. I don't suppose you are, and I don't blame you. I want to buy Dad out of the winery, Emerson said. When Holden left, he returned his stake to me, and I want to run the winery with Wren and Cricket, and there will be a place for you, Mom, but not for him. He's never going to agree to that. If he doesn't, I'll expose him because I won't sit by and allow him to abuse women of his power to continue. He has two choices. He can either leave of his own accord or I'll burn this place to the ground around me, and I won't let this injustice go on. I didn't have to worry about you after all, her mother said. You have more spine than I ever had. Well, now I do for this, but when it comes to Holden, your pride won't keep you warm at night, and you can trade one man for another, believe me. I've tried. If you don't put it all on the line, you'll regret it. You'll have to sit by while he marries someone else and has children with her. And everything will fester inside you until it turns into something dark and ugly. Don't let that be you. Don't make the mistakes that I did. Mom, who? It doesn't matter now. It's been so long. He probably doesn't remember me anyway. I doubt that. All right, he remembers me, she said, but not fondly. I love him, Emerson said. I love him, and I don't know what I'm going to do without him, which is silly because I've lived 29 years without him. You would think I would be just fine. When you fall in love like that, you give away a piece of yourself, her mom said, and that person always has it. Doesn't matter how long you had them for. When it's real, that's how it is. Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Hope that he gave you a piece of him. Hope that whatever he says, he loves you just the way you love him. And then do more than hope. You're strong enough to come in here and stand up to your father, to do what's right for other people. Do what's right for you, too. Emerson nodded slowly. Okay. She looked around and suddenly laughter bubbled up inside her. What? It's just a few weeks ago at the launch for the Select label I was thinking how bored I was, looking forward to be my boring future, my boring marriage. I would almost pay to be bored again because at least I wouldn't be heartbroken. Oh, trust me, Mom, her mom said, as painful as it is, love is what gets you through the years, even if you don't have it anymore. You once did. Your heart remembers that it exists in the world, and then suddenly the world looks a lot more hopeful. Because when you believe that two people who come from totally different places can come together and find something that goes beyond explanation, something that goes beyond what you can see with your eyes, that's the thing that gives you hope in your darkest hour. Whatever happens with him. Yeah, Emerson said softly, I know. She did because he was the reason she was standing here connecting with her mother now. He was the reason she was deciding to take this action against her father. And she wouldn't be the reason they didn't end up together. She would not give up too soon. She didn't care how it looked. She would go down swinging. Optics be damned. Oh. Gotta get a Kleenex. Holden wasn't a man given to questioning himself. He acted with decisiveness, and he did what he had to be done. But his last conversation with Emerson kept replaying itself over and over in his head. And worse, it echoed in his chest, made a terrible, painful, tearing sensation around his heart every time he tried to breathe. It felt like he didn't even hell know what it was, because he never even felt anything like it before. He felt like he had cut off an essential part of himself and left it behind, and had nothing to do with revenge. He was at the facility where his sister lived, visiting her today because it seemed like an important thing to do. He owed her an apology. He walked through the manicured grounds and up to the front desk. I'm here to see Sonia Jane. The facility was more like a high-end apartment. His sister had her own room on the second floor overlooking the ocean. When he walked in, she was sitting there on the end of the bed, her hair loose. Good to see you, he said. Holden. She smiled, but she didn't hug him. They weren't like that. I came to see you because I owe you an apology. An apology? That doesn't sound like you. I know it doesn't. What happened? I did some thinking, and I realized what I did. I might have hurt you more than helped you, and I'm sorry. You never hurt me, she said. Everything you do is just trying to take care of me, and nobody else does that. He looked at his sister, so brittle, raw, and he realized that her issues went back further than James Maxfield. She was wounded in 1,000 ways by a life that had been more than hard knocks. And she was right. No one took care of her but him. And he had been the oldest, so no one taking care of him at all. And the one time that Sonia had tried to reach out, the one time she tried to love, she had been punished for it. No wonder it had broken her in that way it had. I abandoned my revenge plot. Emerson and I are going to divorce. You don't look happy, she said. I'm not. He said, I hurt someone I didn't mean to hurt. Are you talking about me or her? He was quiet for a moment. I didn't mean to hurt either of you. Did you just really marry her to get back at her father? No, not only that. I mean, that's not why I married her. You look miserable. I am, but I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. It has to do with love. This is how love is. It's miserable. It makes you crazy, and I can say that. You're not crazy, he said fiercely. Don't say that about yourself, and don't think it. Look where I am. It's not a failure, and it doesn't. Sonia, there's no shame in having a problem, and there's no shame in getting help. Fine. Well, what's your excuse then? I got help, and you ruined your life. I'm not in love. You're not? Because you have that horrible look about you, like someone who just had their heart utterly ripped out of their chest. He was quiet for a moment. He took a breath. He listened to his heart beat steadily in his ears. My heart is still there, he said. Sure, but not your heart, the one that feels things. Do you love her? I don't know how to love people. How would we know what that real healthy love looks like? I believe that you love James Maxfield, but look where it got you. Weird. We are busted up and broken from the past. How are we supposed to figure this out? What's real? If it feels real, it's real. I don't know. I don't think there's anything all that difficult to understand about love. When you feel like everything good about you lives inside another person and they're wandering around with the best of you in their chest, you just want to be with them all the time, and you're so afraid of losing them, because if you do, you're going to lose everything interesting and bright about you too. He thought of Emerson, of the way she looked at him, and he didn't know what if Sonia said was true, if he felt like the best of him was anywhere at all, but what he knew for sure was that Emerson made him want to be better. She made him want something other than money or success, something deep and indefinable, and that he couldn't quite grasp. She said she loved me, he said, his voice scraped raw and the admission unexpected. And you left her? I forced her to marry me. I couldn't. She loves you. She obviously not being forced into anything. I took advantage. If you were going to go worrying about taking advantage of women, it might be helpful if you believe them when they tell you that what they want. You deciding that you know better than what she does, what's in her heart, is not enlightening. It's just more of the same man telling a woman what she ought to be, and what's acceptable for her to like and want. He hadn't quite expected this from his sister. She loves you. If she loves you, why won't you be with her? He thought about what Emerson had said when she called him a coward. Because I'm afraid. I don't know how to be in love, he said finally. It was the one true thing he said on that matter. He hadn't meant to lie. He hadn't known that he had, but it was so clear today as him now. Look at how we were raised. I don't know a damn thing about love. You're the only one who ever did, Sonia said. Look at what you've done for me. Look at where I am. It's not because of me. No, he said, it's because of me. I got you started on all this modeling stuff, and you went to a party where you met James. That's not what I meant. I meant the reason that I'm taken care of now. The reason that I've always been taken care of is because of you. The reason Mom has always been taken care of, that's you. All those family you gave money to, houses to, and I know I've been selfish being here. I've had a lot of time to think, and I know sometimes I'm not lucid. But sometimes I am, and when I am, I think a lot about how much you gave, and no one gave back to you. I don't think that it's that you don't know how to love Holden. I think it's that you don't know what it's like when someone loves you back, and you don't know what to do with it. He just sat there and stared, because he never thought of himself that way, that his sister seemed to, but she made him sound, well, kind of not like a bad guy. Maybe even someone who cared quite a bit. I don't blame you for protecting yourself, but this isn't protecting yourself, it's hurting yourself. You might be right, he said. His voice was rough. You might be right. Do you love her? He thought about the way Emerson had looked that moment before he had rejected her, beautiful and bare, his wife in every way. Yeah, he said in a rough voice, I do. Then none of it matters, not who her father is, not being afraid, just that you love her. Look what it did to you, to be in love, he said. Don't you think I'm right to be afraid of it? Oh, she said, you're definitely right to be afraid of it. It's terrifying, and it's the power to destroy everything in its path. But the only alternative is this, the kind of gray existence, the one that I'm in, the one that you're in. So maybe it won't work out, but what if it did? And then suddenly he had filled with a sense of determination, with a sense of absolute certainty. There was no what-ifs, because he could make it turn out with his actions. He was a man who had, as Emerson had pointed out, crossed the state for revenge. He sure as hell could do work for required to make love last. It was a risk, a damn sight bigger risk than being angry. But he was willing to take it. Thank you, he said to his sister. Thank you, too, she said, for everything, even for the revenge. Emerson is making a wine label just for you, he said. It's pretty brilliant. Sonia smiled. She is, yes? Well, I can't wait until I come and celebrate with the both of you. Neither can I. And now all that was left for him to go and make sure that he and Emerson, so the two of them could be together for the launch of the wine label and for the rest of forever. Oh, this is so good. Sorry. Emerson was standing on the balcony to her bedroom looking out over the vineyard. It was hers now. She supposed hers and Wren's and Cricket. The deal with her father had been struck, and her mother had made the decision to stay there at the winery and let James go off into retirement. The move would cause waves. There was no avoiding it. Her parents' separation, her father removing himself from the label. But Emerson had been public face of Maxfield for so long it would be a smooth enough transition. The moonlight was casting a glow across the great fields, and Emerson sighed, taking in the simple beauty of it. Everything still hurt. The loss of Holden still hurt. But she could already see that her mother was right. Love was miraculous, and believing in the miraculous, having experienced it, enhanced the beauty in the world, even as it hurt. And then out of the rose she was sure that she saw movement. She held her breath, and there in the moonlight she saw the silhouette of a cowboy. Not just a cowboy. Her cowboy. For a moment she thought about not going down. She thought about staying up there in her room, but she couldn't. She had to go to him, even if it was foolish. She stole out and padded down the stairs, out the front door of the estate and straight down to the vines. What are you doing here? I know I'm not on the guest list, he said. No, she said, you're not. In fact, you were supposed to have ridden off into the sunset. Sorry about that, but the sun has set. Holden, I was wondering if you needed a ranch hand. What? The winery is yours now. I want it to stay yours and your sister. I certainly don't deserve a piece of it. And I just thought the one time that I had it right with you was when I worked here. When it was you and me. Not all this manipulation. So I thought maybe I would just offer you me. Oh, good gravy. Just you? Yeah, he said, just me. I mean, you still have property development money, I assume. Yeah, he said, but I also love you, and I was hoping that you still love me. She blinked hard. Her heart was about to race out of her chest. Yes, she said, I still love you. I do, and all I need is you and not anything else. I feel the same way. He said, you just the way you are. It quit being about revenge, and when it quit being about revenge, I didn't have an excuse to stay anymore. And it scared the hell out of me. Because I never thought that I would be the kind of man that wanted forever. And the wanting scared me. And I don't like being scared. None of us do. But I'm so glad that you came here, though, she said. Because if you hadn't, I thought as long as everything looked good, that it was close enough to being good. I had no idea what it could be like this. And if I had never met you, then I would never have had anything but money and anger. And believe me, compared to you, that's nothing. You showed me my heart, she said. You showed me what I really wanted. And you showed me mine. I was wrong, he said. And when I said those things couldn't be fixed, they can be. When I told my sister that I came here to get revenge, she was not happy. It's not what she needed from me. She needed love, support. Revenge just destroys. Love is what builds. I want to love you and build a life with you forever. So do I. She threw herself into his arms, wrapped her own around his neck, and kissed him. So do I. Emerson Maxfield knew without a shadow of a doubt, as her strong, handsome husband held her in his arms, that she was never going to be bored with her life again. Because she knew now it wasn't a pretty party that launched a successful campaign was going to bring happiness or decide who she was. No, that came from inside her, and that was enough. Who she was loved Holden McCall, and whatever came their way, it didn't scare her because they would face it together. She remembered that feeling that she had been adrift, like nowhere to go, like her whole life had been tethered. But she had found who she was. She had found her heart in him, and she knew that she would never have to question where she belonged again, because it was wherever he was, forever. The end. And it gets a 40 just like the other books. So it's an outstanding book, both books put together. As you can tell, this one brought me to tears again. That good. And I'm definitely going to be on the search for the third book that I didn't get to read. So I'll probably have to go to eBay before I go to bed and put it on watch for The Rancher's Wager. So that was pretty amazing. And Maisey, as always, you don't disappoint. Thank you for an outstanding book, as always. Thank you for writing great stories and making us all wish that that kind of love was for real and never left us with broken hearts. Well, it's time for me to do my usual thing with y'all. I hope that you're keeping your social distance, washing your hands. When you're not washing your hands, using your hand sanitizer, and as always, wear your mask. I wish the very best for each and every one of you. Till we meet again, hopefully tomorrow. God bless.